So using this newfound strength, Aditya fights against the Pallavas and he finishes the Pallava dynasty. So the last Pallava ruler, Aparajita Pallava, is finished off by Aditya the First. He
That's
dies
so
in the
sad. His name or title is actually the
Aparajita.
opposite of what happened.
That's an irony of history.
Yeah. Namaste and welcome to another episode of A Questioning Mind. I'm your host Sagarika and I am rejoined by Jeysundhar again. If you haven't watched our first video, then go and watch it. We will actually begin with the basics today. And with that, Jeysundhar, I'm just going to ask you about the Chola kingdom. I'm sure the audience would appreciate, having their memory refreshed. You've read about them in schools, you've watched movies about them. So why is this kingdom so famous? Who were the kings who made the most difference? And why are they so respected after so many centuries in India today?
Hi, Sagarika. It's good to be back here and to be discussing the Cholas, one of the most important dynasties in Indian history. So just to give you a very brief primer on the Cholas. So one of the three dynasties in what was essentially the Tamil country of that time are the Cholas, along with the Cheras and the Pandyas. So the regional division between these three dynasties is that the Cholas are centered around the Kaveri Delta. You have the Pandyas to the south of them, based out of Madurai, and you have the Cheras to the west in what is today Western Tamil Nadu as well as most of Kerala. The Pandyas are present in the south, centered in Madurai, and to some extent the southern part of Kerala. So this is the geographical division between these three dynasties from what we know as the Sangam age of Tamil history. Okay, so we have mentions of these three dynasties from Sangam literature. Various Sangam works they wax eloquent about these three dynasties and their individual contributions. They also mention the Cholas. So being centered in the Kaveri Delta, the Chola country is considered to be rich in terms of its agricultural prosperity. So there is this.
Sorry, since you mentioned Sangam literature, I am sure that we'd like to delve a little bit more into who were the main authors, or not maybe the names, but the period of their being written and why they specifically mention these three kingdoms.
So the Sangam literature is variously dated to from the 3rd century BCE to the 3rd century CE. According to traditional belief systems, there were three Sangams, and the records of the first two have been lost to history, and it is only those of the third Sangam that we have with us. Okay, and the Sangam literature is broadly classified into the Ettu Togai, a set of 8 anthologies. Then another set of texts called the Pattu Pattu, and then another set of 18 texts called the Padinan Kizhkanakku works. Okay, it is the Thirukkural, the famous Thirukkural, comes in this list of the Padinan Kizhkanakku works. Okay, so this is collectively what we have as a Sangam literature. This combined with the 5 Tamil epics, out of which we have complete records of at least 3, contribute to this corpus of what we call early Tamil literature. Okay, so the Cholas are mentioned extensively in the Sangam works. To go back to what I was saying, the famous saying is that Sola Nadu Sorudaithu, which means the Chola country was rich in its agricultural prosperity in providing food. Sera Nadu Vera Mudaithu, meaning that it was rich with elephants.
Oh.
And Pandya Nadu Muttudaithu, it was rich in pearls.
Okay. So these are the different depictions of Cholas, the Cheras, and the Pandyas. So the Cholas were rich in agriculture.
How each dynasty's territory was seen within, if you were to put it in one line, this was how it was seen at that point of time.
So for reference, the Cholas had agriculture to their fame, the Cheras had elephants, and the Pandyas had pearls.
Yeah. So in the same way that we see Magadha, why Magadha emerged as an empire, one of the reasons was that the forests of Magadha were rich with elephants, which formed a strong part of the Magadhan army, along with various other reasons, of course. But this was one of the reasons. Similarly, the Cheras also have a similar wealth of elephants in their forests. Okay. And one of the most popularly known Cholas from the Sangam age, the Sangam Chola, so to say, is Karikala. There are several others, but to cut it short, we will touch upon Karikala, who is mentioned as the one who raised the banks of the Kaveri River. Most people interpret that as the fact that Karikala built the Kallanai Dam, which is not substantiated by the literary sources that we have. But he did raise the banks of the Kaveri River. Okay. Now, this is as far as the Sangam Cholas are concerned. We have references from Sangam literature as well as the Mahavamsa of Sri Lanka. We also have Ashoka's major rock edict number 13, which mentions Cholas and Pandyas. Okay, the ports on the territory of the Cholas are mentioned in the Periplus of the Eritrean Sea as well as by Ptolemy.
So,
Okay.
for the audiences, I will link these down below. Actually, these are books available for free now because obviously there's no copyright to them. The Periplus of the Eritrean Sea is written by an anonymous sailor who actually sailed around and came to India. There's a lot of detail. It's a very basic trading literature. It just discusses what went from where. It discusses internal river route systems, etc. And of course, Ptolemy is a very famous Greek who also wrote about, because there were a lot of trade routes between Greece, Rome, and India at the time. So you will find a lot of records of Greeks and Romans writing about India. Jay,
So
I kind of want
there are various
to.
periplus. There are various
Yeah.
periplus covering different parts of the known world at that point of time. Periplus of the Eritrean Sea is of importance to us because Eritrean Sea is the Red Sea. So it covers those ports on both sides of India's coast. And therefore, it is a source of history of what India would have looked like at that point of time.
For the viewers, if you are a reader, you really might enjoy this. There's just a wealth of information, but it's basic. It's not very hard because it just discusses, oh, here the king of Bharuch traded cloth through this system. So it's kind of cool to go back and look at so many centuries ago. I will link them down below. And if you enjoy such conversations, please do hit the like button because it really helps the channel and it's free. So, Jay, I just kind of want to break this down and make it simple because there's a lot of references and I'm not sure that everybody's going to be reading or wanting to do so. I'm going to link them down below, but just going to ask you to kind of simplify the Cholas expeditions and their grandeur and their administration and what makes them so relevant to modern day India.
So after the Sangam Cholas, we do not have any references of the Cholas for almost 600 years. It is then we have the later Cholas, beginning with the ruler that we have records of, named Vijayalaya Chola. Okay. Now, Vijayalaya Chola is a feudatory serving under the Pallavas. Okay. Now, Vijayalaya while serving under the Pallavas, at this point of time, we have references of a copper plate inscription from a place called Velanjeri, which mentions Vijayalaya's father's name as Ottriyuran. So the name Ottriyuran comes from the fact that he was from a place called Ottriyur, which is, you could say it is part of Chennai today. Okay. So Vijayalaya fights as part of the, as a feudatory of the Pallavas. But using the succession chaos within the Pallava throne, he recaptures Tanjavur, his ancestral capital of his of the Sangam Cholas, and he reestablishes himself there. Then comes a battle called the Battle of Tirupurambiyam. Okay, Vijayalaya's son Aditya I takes the support of the Pallavas and defeats the Pandyas. But in this battle, the Pallavas are significantly weakened, while Aditya, through his victory, is strengthened. Okay, so using this newfound strength, Aditya fights against the Pallavas and he finishes the Pallava dynasty. So the last Pallava ruler, Aparajita Pallava, is finished off by Aditya I. He
That's
dies
so
in the
sad. His name or title is actually the
Aparajita.
opposite
Yeah.
of what happened.
That's an irony of history.
Yeah.
So he dies in battle. Aparajita Pallava dies in this battle, and Aditya then continues to wage a series of battles to expand the territory of the Cholas. Okay, and it is after Aditya that we begin to get concrete records of subsequent Chola rulers. Okay, so right after Aditya, like Aditya rules for about 35 years, 32, 33 years. And then he is followed by Parantaka the first. From Parantaka's time, we have extensive records of the Cholas. And if you were to ask me why we study the Cholas so much, it is because they were meticulous in documenting everything that they did. And those records are available to us to this day, because a good chunk of those records come from stone inscriptions, and stone being a permanent material has continued to hold on to those records, and we are able to have access to them, and that is why we study the Cholas, and that is the information, that is the source of this information. Furthermore, our interest in Cholas is kindled by the fact that what those records tell us is that the Cholas ran a very efficient administration with a very strong bureaucratic setup, a streamlined tax collection system that did not burden the taxpayer beyond a point. So, I mean, there are several scientific methods that the Cholas undertake. To the extent of you have Rajaraja Chola, the most popular of the Cholas. I'm cutting short across centuries here. So you
Nice.
have Rajaraja, the most popular of the Cholas, who undertakes a large-scale land survey, measures the land using a new scale that he has set up, and then, continuing with the legacy of his ancestors, he classifies the land into 12 grades based on the productivity of the land, and the revenue is fixed based on this classification, so that an unproductive or a less productive land is not taxed too heavily.
Mm, mm.
You need to understand that this is before the industrial revolution, so land revenue remains the mainstay of the kingdom,
Right.
right? So it is agriculture and land revenue that contributes to most of your collections,
Mm.
and therefore it has to be paid enough attention to, and that is what Rajaraja does, and in general that is what the Cholas do. And considering that they are from the Kaveri Delta, but the territories that they conquer do not have the benefit of a river, a strong perennial river flowing through them, the Cholas undertake large scale irrigation operations. In fact, the Karande copper plate inscriptions talk about Parantaka the first and say that he constructed hundreds and thousands of channels for irrigating the land.
I
Okay.
think this is one line that was there in at least NCRT school textbooks when I was studying. So I remember this. What we'll try to do, Jay, is probably um, in another episode. I hope you can make the time. Um, a sort of lineage
Mm-hmm.
of main kings of the Chola dynasty, and
Mm-hmm.
what they were most famed for.
Mm-hmm. We could do that. So after what I said, that we have meticulous records and their agricultural reforms that the Cholas undertook, we can also say that the Cholas built a large number of temples during their reign
Right.
across the empire. Now, these temples, unlike some that have commented that this was to show the prestige of individual kings or to show the grandeur of the kingdom, etc., etc., these were temples going beyond that to actually cater to the religious needs of the people.
But temples were not merely religious, they were also economic
Yes,
powerhouses, they were trading
absolutely.
posts, they
No, I'm saying at their
also
core and the purpose
right,
that
of
they
course, of course.
at their core and the purpose that they continue to be used for to this day, the temples cater to the religious needs of the people. Of course, the temples were also an integral part of the local assemblies, in the sense that temples loaned money to the functioning of the local assemblies if there was a need. And during times of famine, the temple wealth helped people tide over tough times, and the loans that were taken could be repaid. But the point is, those loans were available at that point of time.
Mm.
And this was another aspect of the temples. The temples also patronized, you see, the temples were the hub of all activity at that point of time. Because once a temple was built, land, large amount of land corpus was created as a grant for the temple. And
Mm.
that land was to be cultivated, and the output of that land was used to maintain the temple.
Mm.
So the moment you create a temple and you have a land grant made for it, you have a set of people who will automatically move there to now cultivate this land. So a village comes up around a temple rather than the village contributing to the construction of a temple. The temple creates a village around it. right from the officials of the temple, the people who work in the temple lands, and so on and so forth. So temples are the center of activity, and because life happened mostly in the villages in an agrarian economy, the temples in those villages were a very important and integral part of those villages.
Hmm.
Which is why the Cholas undertook a large scale operation to convert a lot of brick temples into stone temples,
Ah, all right.
a more permanent material.
Okay, okay.
You see, so there is this Chola queen. You can say that she's analogous to Ahilyabai Holkar, Sembi and
Mhm.
Mahadevi. So she remains, first she's the queen and then she becomes the Rajmata after, succession happens. And, through 3 to 4 kings, she continues large scale conversion operations of brick temples into stone temples. And this is
Right.
partially also the reason attributed to the fact that we have so many temples from the Chola age, but we have nothing of Chola palaces. So the
Oh.
reason attributed is that the Cholas considered that it is only the house of gods which would be built with a permanent material.
Hmm.
The house of man did not deserve a permanent material like stone. The Chola palaces were mostly brick palaces. So we have found ruins of walls in Gangaikonda Cholapuram where Chola built his capital. So we have a place in Gangaikonda Cholapuram village called Maligai Medu, where we
Hmm.
found the walls of what could have been the king's palace at that point of time. And these are made of brick. So a permanent material like stone was considered to be, it was only the house of God which was considered worthy of a material like stone.
Hmm.
Which is also why which is also a sign of the importance that the Cholas accorded to the temples that they constructed.
Hmm.
And the land that was given to a temple as an endowment, the land was
Right.
used to sustain not just the temple's operations but also sustain the people that worked in the temple. And when we say people that worked in the temple, we're not talking only about the priests.
No,
We're
no.
talking about the people that that sang in the temple, that performed musical instruments in the temple, that danced in the
Whoever
temple,
was patronized by the king. Right.
right down to the person who lit lamps in the temple.
Absolutely, absolutely. For the
Okay.
viewers, I will again request please go and watch our one video from the earlier video because, and I'm linking it up here somewhere, because we discussed the Devdasis at length, who were part of the people that were patronized by the kings and were part of the temple ecosystem. Very important part, and it is one
I'll
of the
also
most watched videos ever. So do go and check it out.
I'll also give an example of how the temples were integrated with society. Okay, so we have evidence from inscriptions of a certain kind of contribution. In fact, the person we discussed in the previous episode, Sonagan Paranjoti, is noted for contributing 96 goats to
Right.
3 different people. Yeah. So how this works is that be it the king or be it the bureaucrats or be it the army generals or rich merchants, they make contributions of X number of goats. For example, the scheme was called Sava Mua Perade, or
Hmm.
unaging, undying goats.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, if there is a shepherd and I contribute 96 goats to him, okay, so my contribution means that X amount of ghee from the milk of those goats has to be contributed to the temple for lighting the lamps in the temple. Okay,
Okay, got it. Okay.
okay, ghee made out of goat milk is to be
Right,
used for
right. It
lighting
was
the lamps.
mentioned, right? It was
And the
mentioned.
moment I make the contribution, I also record the amount of ghee that he has to contribute. Okay.
Right.
Now I have given him 96 goats. It is not necessary that he should stick to these 96 goats. Goats reproduce.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he
Absolutely.
can expand his herd to the potential that he deems fit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because he is expanding his herd, I do not increase my demand for the ghee. That demand remains the same.
Right.
Okay. So any expansion that he undertakes is a profit to him. So he is incentivized to take care of those goats and continue expanding his herd. Okay. Further beyond that, now as you know, as these 96 goats age and die, you have their next generation replacing them. Which is why you have the scheme called the unaging, undying goat.
Undying goat.
The man will always have his source of 96 goats with him, and further beyond as much as he deems necessary. So, through this, I'm not only ensuring a sustainable model for lighting that lamp in the temple, I'm also making a social welfare scheme for expanding the milk base of the temple of the empire. I'm also giving livelihoods to goat herds and shepherds, okay, by a charitable contribution by a merchant, for example. Okay, so if I ask a merchant to give 96 goats to a random shepherd, he'll obviously say no. But if I say this is going to light a lamp in the temple,
Yes.
the merchant sees it as a cause worthy of donating to.
Right.
But through this, a whole bunch of people get a livelihood of rearing goats.
Sure. So that's a very developed economy. And again, this is from the article that we discussed yesterday. So thank you so much, Jeff, for joining. I really look forward to our next chat as well. It's very stimulating to have somebody so well versed with history discuss these things online. Viewers, I hope you've liked this. Thank you again.